Hey guys, Christina here, and today I have a look for you at books we read last month, which was October 2020. If you're new here, we have 5 children between the ages of 4 and 12, and we homeschool, as well as some of us really enjoy reading. So I like to share each month for my own personal record, as well as just to share what we're reading for anyone who maybe is doing the same curriculum, because some of it ties back in. So I'm just gonna go ahead and jump straight in with our read alouds. So I talked a bit about this book last month, Angel on the Square by Gloria Whalen, I believe is how you say it. Give you a quick flip through here. It was a good book. I did like this book, how it showed kind of the Russian, well, maybe I should tell you first. So it says it's the fall of 1914, safe behind palace walls, Katya Inova sees St. Petersburg as a magical place. The daughter of a lady in waiting to the Empress, Katya spends all her time with the Grand Duchess. The royal family feels like her own. But outside the palace, a terrible war is sweeping through Europe, and Russia is beginning to crumble under the weight of a growing revolution. Now, as Katya's once certain future begins to dissolve, she must seek to understand what's happening to her beloved country, and for the first time in her life, take charge of her own destiny. So I felt like it really gave a good view into the mindset of kind of the upper class Russian people before the revolution and before the war, and their thinking and their kind of I can't say that word, naivety, you know what I mean, what I'm trying to say. So it was a good book, it was a good read. It was sad too, it did discuss a little bit about war, but it was in kind of a child-friendly-ish way. It does say ages 10 and up on the back. My kids all listen to it, so we read that one, and that goes along with our Story of the World Volume 4, as does all of our read-alouds right now. So then we moved on to Redwood Pioneer by Betty Sterling. This is The Good and the Beautiful, level 6 from their library. There's a few little pictures in here. Let's see, just like little pictures like that. It was a good book. So Tyler, one of my boys, had already read this book, I think just last month, the month before. And so we read it aloud. It says it's set in the 1870s. The story follows Mike O'Grady and his family as they leave their potato farm to settle in the redwood forest. 10-year-old Mike is sad to leave his family's farm, but he soon finds his new home exciting and discovers a love of nature and of drawing. From being threatened by a wounded grizzly bear to discovering waterfalls, Mike's adventures turn into a fun, wholesome book packed with good messages. So it was a good story. It's very simple, very basic, kind of from the perspective of kids moving who had never really been to a city, they'd never really been out of the area they lived in before, and just kind of why people moved to the Redwoods area and what life was like. So it was a good little read. My kids did like that one. And then we moved on to this one, Water Buffalo Days, Growing Up in Vietnam by Hyung Quang Nahong. I hope I'm saying that right. And this is a pretty short book. What's the ages? It says 7 to 10 on it. It has pictures in it. It's quite a short read. And it is, his boyhood days were full of adventure thanks to Tank, the family's water buffalo. Tank was a fierce protector who fought off the attacks of tigers, wild hogs, and panthers. He was intelligent and learned quickly how to lead and guard the other buffaloes. His senses were so keen he could detect crocodiles lurking in the river. And he was gentle, allowing crowds of village children to ride him and even adopting a lonely puppy. So this one was really good because it took place when there was trouble and war going on, but it's just a child's perspective of his family animals and pets and the relationship within the family. It was really good. This author has another book that's quite famous, The Land I Lost, that I've ordered to read for myself because it sounds really good. So that's that book there. Oh, and we read then When My Name Was Kyoko, I think is how you say it, Kyoko, by Linda Sue Park. And this is a book about the Japanese, the time that they had taken over Korea, and they slowly brought more and more rules in. And it's from a child's perspective. It's actually a brother and sister alternating back and forth, talking about, like, now they can't speak Korean, they can't see the Korean flag, now they have to take Japanese names, and that was her Japanese name during that time. It was really good, like really good. I loved that book. I'm gonna buy a copy of it. My kids liked it too. It had some adventure in the end. A lot of information about how Korea changed. Things like the mountainside being deforested during the war, the Second World War, because Japan needed the fuel and the wood. Things like the national tree. They all had to kill all the shrubs and trees that were like the national symbol. So just a really good story, a really good explanation at that time. I knew very little about that. And then the author actually had a little thing in the end about how much of that history is missing, that people in Korea perhaps don't talk about it very much, and a lot of the history is missing. So really interesting. Also some really interesting things about kind of the propaganda from the Japanese during that time in Korea and about the war in general. So I highly recommend that book. It was a good one. Then we're currently reading The Singing Tree by Kate Sarady. This is a sequel to The Good Master, but we haven't read The Good Master. This book can be read on its own. And it's 8 to 12 is the recommended age. I'll show you, there's a few pictures in here. We're almost done, we'll be done in a day or two. But it says, life on the Hungarian plains is changing quickly for Jancy and his cousin Kate. Father has given Jancy permission to be in charge of his own herd, and Kate has begun to think about going to dances. Jancy hardly even recognizes Kate when she appears at Peter and Mari's wedding, wearing nearly as many petticoats as the older girls wear. And Jancy himself, astride his prized horse, doesn't seem to Kate to be quite so boyish anymore. Then Hungary must send troops to fight in the Great War, and Jancy's father is called to battle. The two cousins must grow up all the sooner in order to take care of the farm, all the relatives, Russian soldiers, and German war orphans who take refuge there. I'm really enjoying this book. I feel like it's a really good, again, a perspective of someone in a different country when the war broke out in the First World War, and how life changed, but how it didn't change. There's just little things in here I found really fascinating, so I'm really enjoying the book. A little slow in the beginning, but the end is fantastic. And we're almost done, so I might talk a little bit more about this next month. So then, moving on to our audiobook, we listened to Abominable by Eva Ibbotson. So we listened to her journey to the River Sea. I think it was last month we finished it, and it was fantastic. We loved it. This one, maybe 3.5 out of 5. It was interesting, and it was funny at some points, but it was really bizarre, and the one we listened to, some of the voices were kind of funny. So it's not one I would buy or listen to again, but it's a funny story. It's about Yetis, and they're trying to get them back to England from Don Vidal, I believe it is, and the things that happen along the way, trying to keep them secret. So there you go. So moving on to my kids. So my oldest, who's 12, he read Nightmare Academy 1 and 2, Magnum Chase 1 and 2 by Rick Riordan. And then all my kids, especially my older 3, they read Garfield, Foxtrot, Baby Blues, Far Side, I think it's called, all those kind of comic books. He also read the Wings of Fire books 11 through 13, and The Ogre of Oglethorpe, which I think is the same author, Eva Ibbotson. He said it was okay. Not as good, again, as the one we listened to originally. And then he read this book here, Days of Terror, by Barbara Smucker, who's the author of Underground to Canada. Let's see what it looks like there. And this says, days of peace turn to days of terror for a young boy caught in the tensions of revolutionary times. Set in 1917 and the years following, Days of Terror tells the story of 10-year-old Peter Neufeld and his family. Sickened by the horrors of anarchy, famine, and the Russian Revolution, the Neufelds decide to join the mass exodus of Mennonites to North America. But will they survive the dangers of the journey? He said it was good. This is one I actually want to read for future possible read aloud. Not great, but it was good. It was okay. Then my 12-year-old, he read Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Pokemon, comic books as well. And I give my kids some extra little readers they need to do for history and science, but I didn't keep track this month of all of them. And then he also read this book here, Return to Gone Away, which is the sequel to Gone Away Lake. So that's what it looks like. It says, that's what Portia thinks when her, a wish come true. That's what Portia thinks when her parents buy Villa Caprice, a tumble-down Victorian house along the swampy edge of Gone Away Lake. A new house is always full of surprises, but Portia is completely unprepared for the extraordinary things that happen when her family moves into a new old house. We've listened to the first one in this series and it's okay. Not my style, but 2 of my kids like it a lot. And then my 10-year-old, again, all the comics, the Pokemon, if you read independent readers, I had him do. And then he read Greek Gods and The Chocolate Touch by, who's the author? Patrick Skeen Catling. I don't think it's the first time he's read this book. Short little read and he likes it, so he read it again. My daughter Katie, she reads a lot of just early readers that we have, books from the library, some of the earlier The Good and the Beautiful books like the 1, 2, and 3s. So she kind of reads everything. She doesn't really keep track, but she read a lot. Oh, and My Little Pony. She loves those comic book, graphic novel type things. So then me. So the first book I read was Good for Nothing, and I was really blown away by this book. I was pre-reading it to see if it would work as a read aloud when we study Canada in the future. And I decided it probably won't be, but I will have my older kids read it because I feel like it's a really important book. It's the story of a Métis boy in Quebec who, in the 1950s, who has kind of lost his parents, and where he's living is changing. They're all being made to live in a reservation. They're being made to live in houses. He goes away to school for a little while. He had previously been kicked out of residential school, where the principal had told him he was good for nothing and he would end up just drunk in jail, just like every other Indian. And so it's just the story of him, and it's from the perspective of at that time. So like he explains, he sees something and he's like, well, why are they doing that? Like, why would you? And of course we understand why, but he later finds out like he had no idea. He talks about, I'd say it's more for like teenagers and up, because he talks about some things like the horror of the nighttime. He tries to stay up as late as possible. So he basically sleeps from exhaustion because of the things that happen at night on the reservation. So it's a really good book. Like, I really enjoyed it. It's really sad, but I think it gives a good view of this life, of what happened and what's still happening. Could bring a lot of conversation in from that, but I highly recommend that book. And then the book I'm working on right now is How to Break Up With Your Phone by Catherine Price. I'm probably 3/4 of the way through. A lot of information in the beginning that's really interesting, just about how your phone and smartphones have changed life and changed your brain and connections and such. And then it goes into like actually step by step, what day by day, a plan to break up with your phone basically. I don't use my phone that much. I already do a number of the things she suggests in here, but I wanted to kind of see if there was anything else I could do, which there's a few things that have been useful and interesting. I also am going to have my children read this book, all of them at some point. They don't have phones, but they have iPods, 2 of them. And I think it just has some great stuff in there about, even if you have apps, how to organize them on your phone, questions to ask before you pick your phone up, breaking the habit and the connections. It's a good book. I do recommend it. So I'll probably share a little bit more next month when I finished it, but so far it's a good one. And that's what we read last month. So let me know if you've read any of these books or if you have any questions, and let me know what you guys are reading right now too, because I love to hear that. Otherwise, I hope this finds you having a great day. Take care.